Republican Congressman, 6th District of Virginia, Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Chairman Bob Goodlatte. Mr. Chairman, great to have you with us, sir.
Well, thank you, John. Great to be with you and your listeners.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I want to start with the government's overreach, the ATF trying to ban certain ammunition for AK-15 hunting rifles. First they tried to ban the guns, now they're trying to ban the ammo. The ATF now backed off on it, but now we've got a group of House Democrats saying they're going to reintroduce it. What is the problem with this ammo?
Well, in my opinion, there's been no problem shown with this ammo. It's been used for over 30 years. The AR-15 is the most popular sporting rifle in America. Hundreds of thousands are sold every year. More than 5 million people own them. And this is the most second popular ammo that's used in that rifle. There's no evidence that it's ever been used in a handgun, which is the issue came up because now there is it's called a handgun. If you looked at it, you wouldn't call it a handgun because you really need two hands to hold it or a strap around your arm to use it with one hand. But a handgun that can use the same ammunition. But the fact of the matter is, police say they've never seen that happen, and most police will tell you that's not the kind of handgun they're worried about. They're worried about a handgun that can be concealed and then brought out in an unexpected circumstance. So this, I think, is exactly as you described it, an effort by the Obama administration to ban the rifle, failing because Congress rightly refused to act, and now they have decided to try to go after the ammo. But the response from the Congress, we organized a letter to the ATF signed by 239 bipartisan members of the House, a sizable majority of the House. Similar letter came from the Senate, signed by a majority of senators. They got word that this was an instance where using the power of the purse was going to work, and they decided that they were better served by backing away, and they did, and I'm glad.
Well, and also, as you said, the power of the purse was there. It would have been interesting to see. Do you think Republicans were serious about following through on their threat that without this ban, they just would have defunded the entire ATF?
Well, the ATF came in and met with some members of Congress, including me, but also with the chairman of the Appropriation Subcommittee that deals with funding the ATF, and he made it very clear to them that if they persisted in this measure, some of their priorities were going to be very different than what they were expecting. So what caused them to make the decision to change, I don't know, but we put on a full-court press and were successful, and the Democrats, people who believe in gun control, introduce a bill to try to do what the ATF was trying to do on their own. You know, that's part of the legislative process, but it's part of the process that's going nowhere because there is no support in the House for that type of effort.
Okay, well, finally we win. That's the good news. It's good news to finally win something. Let's go to finance. The budget the House Republicans have submitted to the Senate that actually balances the federal budget. Why would President Obama veto that? We've got $18 trillion in debt.
Yeah, I don't think he believes in balanced budgets. I really believe that he thinks that it is not necessary to balance the federal budget. And believe you me, he's not the first president to believe that because in the last 50 years, the government has had a balanced budget only 6 times in 50 years. You know, in Richmond, in Virginia, they're required by the state constitution to balance the budget every year. And guess what? Every year they balance the budget. Sometimes it's messier than other years. Sometimes they have big fights about whether you're going to cut spending or raise taxes. But because they do it every single year, even when they get into a tough spot, it is not as difficult as where the federal government is. And people who think because the federal government doesn't have to balance its budget, is exempt from the laws of economics are going to be in for a rude awakening at some point in time. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly when that time will be, but you can't defy the laws of economics with an $18 trillion national debt and expect that there aren't going to be serious economic ramifications, maybe disastrous ramifications for allowing this to happen as long as it has. So yes, Since we got back in the majority, every year we introduce a budget and pass a budget through the House that reaches balance, doesn't reach balance quickly enough, in my opinion. I supported one last year offered by the Republican Study Committee, the conservatives in the House, that actually balanced in 4 years. But this one will balance in about 9 years, certainly better than anything the president has offered. And so we're moving ahead with it. We hope the Senate will adopt a budget that will be comparable, and that we can then work out the differences. And the good news about budgets in Washington is that the president doesn't get to put his name on it. He doesn't have to sign the budget. That's something the House and Senate works out, and then they move ahead to do the appropriations bills, and he can sign or veto those. But at least we can do a budget that points towards balancing without the president, who doesn't believe in balanced budgets, interfering.
So, Mr. Chairman, the president introduced a budget with about another $1 trillion added to the debt, so it was a $1 trillion deficit. If you look at the budget the House did, and you look at this fiscal year coming, do you know offhand what the level of deficit was?
I don't know. It has been falling because the economy has been improving. But here's the thing that you need to, I think it was around $500 million, maybe even a little bit less than that, but $500 billion. But $500 billion is a staggering sum of money, and that's down from, several years when it was above $1 trillion a year, mounting up during the Obama administration. So here's the thing that people need to know. Now, 70% of our federal government spending, 70% of our budget, is for what are called entitlement programs or mandatory spending programs that are on automatic pilot. They don't change the way they operate unless we pass laws in the Congress to reform those programs. 70%. Those programs, some of them are, like Medicare, is growing at 4 times the rate of inflation. We're not going to get rid of Medicare, but we definitely need to reform it because you can't sustain something that's growing 4 times as fast as our economy is growing. And as a result of that, the discretionary spending, including the very important part for our national defense, gets squeezed year after year after year. The sequestration that people have complained about is a symptom of this problem. It's not the problem itself. The problem itself is that we need to tackle those 70 entitlement programs and reform them so that they live within their means. Some of them could even be eliminated. And as a result of that, even though the budget deficit has gone down the last couple of years, it's going to march right back up again. And by the year 2020, we'll be back over $1 trillion deficits every year again. At some point, this is going to come home to roost.
Mr. Chairman, do you feel that the Republican leadership right now has the moxie and has the wherewithal to really tackle entitlement reform?
Well, that's my hope. Paul Ryan has been out front on this for a long time, and he stuck his neck out. Some say that was one of the problems that they had in the presidential election. I don't really think so, but we have voted. We put it in our budget every year since we've been back in the majority to reform these programs. And so if the Senate will take the next step and put entitlement reforms in their budget, then I think we can take the further step and start talking about the details of it. That takes place with almost all these programs, not all, but almost all, in the Ways and Means Committee. And so that's going to be the focus of this. And Paul Ryan is the new chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and I'm hopeful that he's going to continue down the path he's been on for a long time. He's passed up the opportunity to run for president, at least that seems to be the indication thus far. And as a result of that, I think he really wants to focus on what he can do as chairman of this very important committee to further what he has been pushing for a long time. If he does that and shows that kind of leadership, I think a lot of members of Congress, maybe even some from the other party, but certainly a majority of Republicans will rally around him.
Mr. Chairman, President Obama, though, he says, look, I've got a phone, I've got a pen, I'm going to raise taxes through executive fiat. That was said through his Josh Ernst the other day. Can he do that legally?
I don't think he can, but we're digging into that because that is an issue for the House Judiciary Committee. The separation of powers, the protection of the United States Constitution, and we will fight him step by step every foot of the way. And what the president has said about entitlement reform is, oh, yeah, I'll do some entitlement reform. In fact, he's even put a little bit of it in his budgets, but then he always says, but I won't do any of it unless you raise taxes first. We got a big tax increase 2 years ago, and we're not going to give any more tax increases. I didn't vote for that one, and I think that one was going to occur automatically. So there were negotiations to temper the increase that took effect, but that was it. Now we need to see the entitlement reforms because these programs are not working the way they're supposed to be working. They're costing far more than they should. And until they're reformed, it's ridiculous to have tax increases because all that money is just going to be used to paper over the problem with the entitlement programs and avoid doing the reforms. So, in my opinion, the president, who is on his way out in his last 2 years, he'll try to do everything he can with his pen and his phone. But I think you're going to see more and more pushback, and that pushback is going to be stronger and stronger.
Mr. Chairman, now what about the fact President Obama's illegal amnesty initiative, now we find out that if this indeed were to go through, we'd have 4 or 5 million people here in the country illegally that have paid no taxes, paid no money in. They're going to be eligible for earned income tax credits up to $24,000. They're going to be eligible for Social Security. The program is already nearly bankrupt now. They've put no money in. It further stresses the system. And President Obama, I asked this to everybody. He got on TV in November when he outlined his plan, and he said, but they're not going to be eligible for entitlements. Now we find out they are, and it's billions of dollars. How is that right? How do you stop that?
It's not right at all. It's another falsehood. And what you didn't mention, you mentioned that these people will be eligible for employment. But what isn't mentioned and needs to be stressed over and over and over again is that the people who get this legal authorization, and remember, the president is stopped right now by the courts. And that's a good thing because, unfortunately, with the rules of the United States Senate, which in my opinion should be changed, the Senate wasn't able to follow through on the House action to cut off this action by the president. So if the courts change their mind, if they lift that stay, that injunction, then he's going to start doing this. And when he does, people are going to find out that when people get this employment authorization, they can work anywhere in America that any employer wants to hire them for. And where most employers will not hire somebody who's here illegally, there are certain sectors of the economy that are rampant with illegal immigration, and some of those employers do know they're hiring illegals, and some other ones don't want to know whether they're hiring illegals. But most of the major corporations of America use the electronic verification of employment system. They're careful about it. They don't hire people who are not lawfully here. But if these people are suddenly lawfully here because the president, with his pen and his phone, gives them that legal work authorization, they're going to be taking real jobs from Americans who really want those jobs and never, ever thought that their job would be one that could be lost to people who are not lawfully present in the United States. It's an outrage. It's got to be stopped. And we'll continue to push for this in the House. We passed 4 strong immigration enforcement bills, including stopping this again, through the House Judiciary Committee over the last 3 weeks. And we hope to bring those bills to the floor of the House soon. But, of course, again, we've got to fight it in the courts. We've got to fight it with the spending measures. We've got to get the Senate to recognize their responsibility. And we've got to continue to push back with legislation like this. But if the president gets a pass from the courts, it's going to be a sad day for this country.
Now, the other thing, along with
John, I'm going to have to go.
Not only these illegals with the new paperwork taking jobs, but Mr. Chairman, wouldn't this also put enormous downward pressure on American wages?
I think so, absolutely. I think Senator Jeff Sessions has been very outspoken about that. John, I appreciate it. I've got to get on to my next appointment, so thanks so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it greatly.
Sir, it's always good to have you.